Some places hold echoes of those who came before. In the chlorinated darkness, they never stopped swimming. Marcus Chen had closed the Riverside Community Center pool 100 times before. The routine never changed. Check chemical levels, skim the surface, shut down the filtration systems, lock the doors, go home to his quiet apartment and a microwave dinner. Tonight felt different. The fluorescent lights hummed louder than usual, casting harsh shadows that seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. The chlorine smell was stronger too, sharp enough to make his eyes water. He'd been maintaining pools for 8 years. He knew when something was off. The main Olympic-sized pool stretched before him, its surface perfectly still under the artificial light. Blue lane dividers floated motionless. No ripples, no movement. The diving board stood silent at the deep end like gallows against the white tiled walls. Marcus pulled his testing kit from the wheeled cart and knelt beside the shallow end. pH strips would tell him if tonight's chemistry was right. As he dipped the first strip into the water, he heard it. Splash. A single, clean sound from somewhere behind him. The kind of splash a diver makes when they slice through the water with perfect form. He turned. The pool was empty. Had been empty since the last swimmer left at 8:30. He'd watched them go, counted heads like he always did. The lap pool to his left was empty too, its surface mirror flat. The therapy pool in the corner showed no signs of disturbance. Hello? His voice echoed off the high ceiling, bouncing between the windows that looked out onto the dark parking lot. No answer. Marcus stood, water dripping from the test strip in his hand. The building was locked. He'd locked it himself 20 minutes ago, checking each entrance twice like his supervisor taught him. No one could get in. No one should be here. But pools didn't splash by themselves. He walked the perimeter of the main pool, his sneakers squeaking against the damp tile. The water was exactly as he'd left it. No displaced lane ropes. No wet spots on the deck that shouldn't be there. Nothing. Just the building settling, he said aloud, though he'd never heard it settle quite like that before. Marcus returned to his testing. The pH was fine. Chlorine levels were perfect. Everything was exactly as it should be. He packed his kit back into the cart and moved to the next pool. The lap pool was smaller, only 4 lanes, used mainly by the early morning swimmers who came in before work. Marcus had skimmed it already, but he ran the net through it again anyway. Anything to keep moving. Anything to ignore the way the silence pressed against his ears like water. He told himself it was nothing. Old buildings made noises. Water shifted in pipes. Pumps clicked on and off. There were a dozen explanations for one strange sound. But as he tested the lap pool's chemistry, Marcus found himself listening. Really listening. The hum of the lights. The distant whisper of the ventilation system. The almost imperceptible sound of water lapping very, very gently against tile. Water that should have been perfectly still. The sounds started 10 minutes later. Marcus was adjusting the pool cover motor when he heard them. Rhythmic. Measured. The unmistakable sound of someone swimming laps. But not just someone. Multiple swimmers. From multiple pools. The main pool. Freestyle. Steady 4-count breathing. Strong strokes cutting through water with practiced efficiency. The lap pool. Backstroke. The distinctive splash-pause splash of arms rotating through their arc. The therapy pool. A slower breaststroke. The kind seniors used during water aerobics. Marcus stood frozen, wrench in hand, listening to an entire swim team training in empty pools. This isn't happening, he whispered. But his ears told him otherwise. These weren't random splashes or the sound of settling pipes. These were swimmers. Perfect swimmers. Each stroke precisely timed, each breathing pattern exactly what he'd expect from experienced athletes. He walked toward the main pool, his footsteps echoing. The swimming sounds continued, completely unaffected by his presence. As he approached the shallow end, he could hear the subtle differences in technique. The freestyle swimmer was using a bilateral breathing pattern. 3 strokes, breathe left, 3 strokes, breathe right, tight. Textbook form. The water was empty. No bodies cut through the blue. No arms broke the surface. No kick splashes disturbed the lane dividers. But the sounds continued, as clear and consistent as if you were watching a full pool of swimmers during peak hours. Marcus grabbed his phone and turned on the flashlight, sweeping it across the water. The beam revealed nothing new. Just empty pool, blue tiles and shadows that seemed to shift just outside the light's reach. The backstroker in the lap pool executed a perfect flip turn. Marcus spun toward the sound. He knew that technique. The pause, the rotation, the push-off from the wall. He'd watched hundreds of swimmers perform the same movement. But lane 4 of the lap pool showed no sign of disturbance. No wake from the turn. No bubbles rising from the push-off. He moved closer, phone light extended. The swimming sounds followed his movement. As he approached the main pool, the freestyle swimmer seemed to move with him, staying in the lane closest to where he walked. When he stopped, the rhythm paused for exactly 3 seconds, then resumed. When he took a step toward the water's edge, the stroke rate increased slightly. It was responding to him. Marcus backed away from the pool. The swimming sounds grew fainter, as if the invisible swimmer had moved to the far end. He stepped closer again. The sounds returned, now in the lane, directly in front of him. "What do you want?" he asked the empty water. The freestyle swimmer stopped mid-stroke. Complete silence filled the pool area. No splashing, no breathing. Even the building's ventilation system seemed to hold its breath. Then, slowly, the therapy pool began to bubble. Not from the jets, those were turned off. These were bubbles of exhaled air, rising in a pattern that suggested someone treading water, staying afloat, staying still, waiting. Marcus realized he was holding his own breath. His heart hammered against his ribs. Sweat mixed with the humid pool air, making his shirt cling to his back. The bubbles stopped. All 3 pools fell silent again, but it wasn't the comfortable quiet of an empty facility. It was the silence of held breath, of things underwater, waiting to surface. Marcus tried to finish his checklist. He really did, but the water wouldn't let him. Every time he bent to test chemicals, the surface rippled. Not random disturbances, deliberate patterns. Freestyle wake formations appeared in lane 3 of the main pool, complete with the characteristic V-shaped waves that followed a swimmer's body. The lane rope bobbed in perfect rhythm, as if someone was swimming beneath it, their stroke disrupting the water just enough to set the dividers in motion. In the lap pool, a breaststroke wake emerged. The distinctive double arm pull created twin currents that spread toward the walls exactly as they should. Marcus had watched this pattern thousands of times. Bodies moved through water in predictable ways. Physics didn't lie, but there were no bodies. The therapy pool showed the chaotic splash patterns of treading water, irregular kicks, arms moving to maintain position. Someone, something, staying afloat in the shallow end, right where the handicap access ramp descended into the water. Marcus dropped his testing kit. Vials scattered across the wet tile, one rolling toward the main pool's edge before stopping just short of the water. "I can see you moving the water," he said, his voice cracking. "What are you?" The wake pattern stopped instantly. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. 20. Long enough for Marcus to wonder if he'd imagined everything, if stress and too many late shifts had finally snapped his grip on reality. Then footsteps began emerging from the therapy pool. Wet footprints appeared on the tile, each one perfectly formed, toes clearly defined in the pooled water. Human feet, barefoot, walking up the handicap ramp with careful, measured steps. Marcus backed away, his eyes locked on the approaching prints. They were small feet, maybe a size 6 or 7. A woman's feet, or a teenage swimmer's. The prince reached the top of the ramp and turned toward him. Step, dot, step, step. Each footprint appeared just before an invisible foot would have touched down, water spreading from the contact point exactly as it should. The gait was steady, purposeful. Whatever made these prints was walking directly toward him. Marcus stumbled backward, knocking over his maintenance cart. Brushes and chemicals scattered across the floor. A container of chlorine powder split open, the white crystals spreading like salt around his feet. The wet footprints kept coming. 5 feet away. 4. 3. Marcus turned to run and slipped on the spilled chemicals, going down hard on his knee. Pain shot up his leg as he scrambled toward the exit. Behind him, more footsteps emerged from the main pool. Bigger prints this time, then smaller ones from the lap pool. They weren't alone anymore. A whole team of invisible swimmers was climbing out of the water, leaving trail after trail of wet prints across the facility floor. Some prints showed the long stride of tall swimmers. Others were smaller, quicker steps. All of them human. All of them impossible. Marcus reached the door and fumbled with his keys. His hands shook so badly he couldn't find the right one. The wet footsteps were spreading throughout the pool area now, some heading toward the locker rooms, others circling the pool's perimeters. One set walked directly toward the door where he stood. The lock finally turned. Marcus yanked the door open and felt something brush against his ankle. Not a touch exactly, more like the sensation of passing through someone else's space. Cold, wet, present. He looked down. A pool of water was forming around his foot, though he hadn't stepped in anything. The water was warm, body temperature, and it smelled like chlorine and something else. Something organic and alive. Something that had been holding its breath underwater for a very long time. Marcus ran through the community center's darkened hallways, his keys jangling with each step. Behind him, he could hear water dripping. Not the steady drip of a leaky pipe, but the irregular pattern of water falling from wet hair, wet skin, wet clothes that weren't there. Drip, die, drip, 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 chaya, dice, china, die, ball, die. The sound followed him past the weight room, past the aerobic studio, past the reception desk where Mrs. Henderson's photo smiled from her daytime post. Emergency exit signs glowed red in the darkness, showing him the way out. But the dripping sounds multiplied. What had started as one invisible presence was now several, maybe dozens. Water hit the linoleum behind him in overlapping rhythms, as if an entire swim team was walking through the building, leaving chlorinated puddles in their wake. Marcus reached the main exit and slammed through the crash bar. Cold night air hit his face as he stumbled into the parking lot. His Toyota sat alone under a flickering streetlight, exactly where he'd left it 3 hours ago. He turned back toward the building. Through the glass doors, he could see wet footprints appearing on the lobby floor. They pressed against the doors from the inside, leaving palm prints and forehead smudges on the glass as if invisible faces were looking out at him, watching him. Marcus fumbled with his car keys, dropped them, snatched them from the asphalt. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. The car door handle was ice cold, colder than the October air warranted. He slid into the driver's seat and immediately started the engine. The radio crackled to life, some late-night talk show discussing conspiracy theories. Marcus snapped it off. He needed silence. Real silence. Not the pregnant quiet of the pool area, where things move just beneath the surface of perception. The Toyota's headlights illuminated the community center as he backed out of his parking space. Everything looked normal. Just a suburban recreation facility, closed for the night. The pools were dark behind their windows. The building was still. Marcus put the car in drive and started toward home. That's when he noticed the smell. Chlorine. Strong and sharp, filling the car's interior as if he'd just walked out of the pool area. But he'd been outside for 5 minutes. The smell should have faded by now, should have been replaced by the familiar scent of his car's interior. Instead, it was getting stronger. Marcus rolled down the windows, letting the cool night air rush through the car. The chlorine smell persisted. Worse, he could smell something else now. Something organic and warm, like the scent that lingered after a crowded pool session. The smell of many bodies in close quarters. He looked in his rearview mirror. The back seat was empty, but water was beading on the fabric, forming perfect drops that caught the streetlight glow. The drops weren't random, they formed patterns. Human-shaped patterns. Impressions of bodies sitting in seats, water pooling where swimmers might rest after practice. Marcus pressed the accelerator. The Toyota lurched forward, putting distance between him and the community center. But the smell grew stronger. The water patterns in his back seat multiplied. By the time he reached his apartment building, he could hear it again. Dripping. The sound followed him up 2 flights of stairs, down the hallway to his door. It echoed in his bathroom as he showered, trying to wash away the chlorine smell that clung to his skin. It was still there when he went to bed, a steady rhythm like a heartbeat made of water. Drip. Drip. Dot. Drip. In the morning, Marcus would call in sick. He'd never go back to the community center. He'd tell his supervisor the job wasn't a good fit, that he needed to find other opportunities. But he'd never tell anyone about the wet footprints he found in his kitchen that morning, leading from his front door to the sink, where something had apparently gotten a drink of water in the middle of the night. Perfectly human footprints, still warm to the touch.